So let's look at configuring default static routes. Now, if you want to follow along, this packet tracer file is linked in the description below. You can download it, open it up, and follow along. This is basically, we've taken the network that we did the video on configuring dual stack or static routes in dual stack environment. We've taken this and we've added an ISP connection here. And you can see our IP addressing and everything is documented. So we want to start configuring default static routes. Now let's start with this router, R2. So let's give ourselves a little more room, and we need to create a default static route for IPv4 and for IPv6. So we're going to start with IPv4, and the command is going to be config t, get into global config mode, and it's IP route, and the default static route is sometimes called the gateway of last resort, or the default gateway, or the quad 0 route. It's called the default gateway or gateway of last resort, even if it's not done via static. But when we're doing static, we'll call it a quad 0 route sometimes, because we put quad zeros as our destination network and as our subnet mask. So this will match everything. Now it's going to be going out through an Ethernet connection, and like we talked about before, when you're going through an Ethernet connection, you probably should do a next hop static route rather than a directly connected static route. So we're going to put in our IP address of our next hop, 209.156.18.9. And we'll see that right here, 209.156.18, and this interface is .9. Okay, that'll create our default static route for IPv4. For IPv6, it's IPv6 route, and for IPv6, it's ::/0, which is the same thing in IPv6 as this is in IPv4. It's basically all zeros, nothing has to match. And we'll send it out through, or send it to our next hop, 2001 DB8 ACAD : let's take a look here. It's ACAD : 17 : 1. 17 : 1. And there is our IPv6 default static route. Now, if we exit out of here, and let's go ahead and go full screen here, and let's issue the command show IP route. Now we're going to see down here this static route with the asterisk, which means that this is the candidate default route, or it identifies it as the default route. So quad 0, and this is where it's going to. And you'll also see right here, gateway of last resort is, and it gives us basically the same information. Now, same thing for IPv6. Show IPv6 route, and we have right up here at the top is static route to : /0. Now you'll notice that this doesn't have a couple of things. It doesn't have the asterisk that says that this is a candidate default route. It doesn't have the gateway of last resort, but it does give the static routing information. Alright, that works great, but that only works for this router. These two don't have a default route yet. We need to go ahead and set those as well. So let's come to R1, and we'll start out here. And let's issue the command. Let's log in first. Show IP route. And our static routes are going through 192.168.0.2. Now, that's going to be going the same way, so the default route's going to go the same way as all the others, so that's actually going to make this easier to write. So, we're just going to do config t, IP route, and do our quad zeros through the same gateway. And then for IPv6, do show IPv6 route. It'll be IPv6 route and : /0, and then we're going to look for, this is where all of our other ones are going, so we're just going to go through the same place, which is nice and easy because we've only got one way in and one way out. DB8 : colon CAFE colon 2. And there's our IPv6 route. So we have default static routes set up on all of them. Now, or on these two. We still don't have one set up over here. But before we do, let's talk about one other thing. Could I get rid of my static routes? Because all of my traffic is coming this way. Could I get rid of these two static routes and just use a default static route as a catch-all? Well, yeah, actually now we could. Now, I still don't always like that. And the reason I don't is because if we add in another connection or something like that later on, we're going to have to undo it anyway. But you will see some people who will do that. They'll say this is a stub network, default route all of it. And then we just don't have to worry about it. And that does work. Just be aware that if and when you do that, or if and when you go to add something else off of this router, it is no longer a stub network, and you have to undo your default static routes, or at least some of them, and redo a bunch of other routing information. Now, both of these static routes, or all of the static routes that we've written so far, let me try that again. All of the default routes, there we go, that we've written so far have been next hop routes. Can we write a default static route using an exit interface to make it a directly connected static route? Yeah, let's actually do that on R3 because R3, remember, has that point-to-point interface. So here's what we're going to do. Log in, config T, and it's IP route 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0 through S000. And then for IPv6, it's the same thing, IPv6 route colon 0 or colon slash 0 through S000, which is our exit interface. Okay, there we go. We have default static routes now fully configured for our network.